Hey, Trace, tell us just some high points or things that you can remember about your dad.
Okay, well, growing up, Dad was a businessman, and work was the most important thing. And when we were young, we didn't particularly like that, but we recognized that that's what provided our house and home and everything our family had. So, in retrospect, we recognize it as a good quality that he was a working man and business was number one. But we always knew that no matter what activity we were involved in, with whether it was eating supper, playing catch with the baseball, or actually getting a good licking for something we were guilty of doing, he would, if the phone rang, everything stopped. And of course, if we were having a good time, we were upset. But if we were in the middle of getting a licking, we liked it because he could be right in the middle of giving us a spanking, as well as yelling at us, giving us the real business. And he would suddenly stop, pick up the phone and go, "Can I help you?" So,
Then you were off the hook.
well, we were off the hook momentarily, and he at least was able to calm down. But sometimes those conversations would go on for an hour, and there went our baseball catching. That was over for the evening. But it was the phone he never ignored the ringing phone, and he always treated whoever called like they were the most important thing, and whatever else was going on didn't matter. When we were young and we were growing up, Dad decided that he wanted to move out to Hyde Park so that he could teach us how to work. And so we moved out to Hyde Park, and it had a barn and corrals and some pasture out there, and he was going to teach us how to work. And anyway, we started getting calves, and we raised calves, and then we slaughtered the calves. Of course, everybody got upset when they slaughtered the calves to eat them, but we ended up getting an old horse, a nag, that was a little swayback, but was easy for us kids to learn to ride on. But later on, we got tired of the old nag, and we wanted a more spirited horse. And it so happened that Dad wound up with a green broke, semi-wild mare, and of course, we immediately wanted to put the saddle on her and ride her. And of course, I was the oldest, so I got to get on that horse first. Threw the saddle on her and hopped on, and immediately got bucked off and knocked out. I mean, knocked out cold. And of course, Scott, just after seeing me get bucked off and knocked out, he wanted to get on. So Dad says, "Okay, hop on there." He immediately got bucked off and knocked out cold. And so Dad dragged us both in and laid us on our beds, and we both woke up later with headaches. And anyway, that's a story of us getting involved in cows and horses.
Well, I remember that. That was Jan.
Jandu, yeah.
Jandu, we bought it from Brent Hogan. I told him that I wanted to get a horse that was broke. And he bucked two of my kids off and knocked them off. And they were out in the pasture, and I had to crawl through the fence and I'm trying to hold up one of my kids to get him in the house and bend over and crawl through the fence and not drop the kid. And I had a heck of a time getting through the fence, but finally did, or laid him down and scooted him under or whatever, and took him in. And about the time the second one came in, while the first one was just starting to come around, I called Brent, and I said, Brent, I wanted a horse that was broke. I told you I needed something broke, and he said, well, you can ride her, she's fine. And I said, no, my kids got bucked off of her. Well, it's not a kid's horse. You told me you wanted a horse. I thought you wanted one for you. Anyway, yeah, we had a lot of experiences where Trace became a bareback rider. I guess that he got enough experience from Jan Dude that he thought he could maybe just. Ryder, you need to talk about some of your horse tricks.
No, but not right now. This isn't supposed to be about me, but I got one other story.
Okay.
Okay, another deal that Dad decided to do when we were kids and teach us a little about business was we had a 16-acre piece that was about a mile or so from our house. And he decided there was a canal running right along that property, the whole piece of the property. And he thought, that'd be perfect. We can go plant a bunch of Christmas trees down there and sell them when Christmas comes around. Anyway, he went and bought a bunch of little saplings that were about a foot tall, probably 300 of them he bought. We had to go out there and plant them all. And then we had to go out and get a bucket and dump water on each individually sapling all summer long, every day. We had to walk all the way out there, a mile, with our buckets and water these saplings that would become Christmas trees. Well, probably don't have to tell you, they all died. we didn't even get one of them to survive. Anyway, that's another little memory from.
I thought you were going to tell us the service station story.
Well, I could do that. Dad, being a businessman, wanted to pass those qualities on to us as kids, and so he was always coming up with an idea of how we could make money and learn how to work. And sometimes they were things that we didn't particularly want to do, but we did anyway, because he wanted us to learn. We always were going to that, especially Daniel. Well, why can't we get an allowance like everybody else? And he says, well, if you want money, I'll give you a job. But there was never an allowance.
Are you kind of glad for that now, that you had to earn your way and what that taught you? What did that teach you?
Well, I guess we're glad that it happened, but we didn't like it at the time.
But
Every one of them are financially independent. Every one of them are financially independent and capable of running any kind of business that they decide they want to run. They've all been hard workers, honest people, and they are respected by all the friends that know them. They're all honorable young people that are financially very well off, and they've done that on their own.
I was in, I believe, the 9th grade, and Dad came up with another idea. Well, he was involved in a real estate transaction with a gas station that a guy was trying to get rid of. So between selling the gas, between the sale of the gas station and the purchase by somebody else, we had to keep the gas station running. And so this was another good example where Dad decided he could teach us to work and work with the public. And so I was in the 9th grade, Scott was in the 8th grade, and Daniel was in the 6th grade. So we're young kids, but we're put in charge of running this gas station. And Dad told us right from the beginning, he says, yeah, this is self-serve, but if a woman pulls up, you go out, you wash her window, you pump her gas for you. And it actually became that we were supposed to do it with everybody. And at that point, we were able to learn to serve people when they pulled into the gas station. We learned how to make change the proper way in meeting the public. And we had to be to work on time, and we'd hop off the bus and run over to the gas station and immediately start to work. And now I've kind of lost.
And Daniel,
Oh yeah, Daniel had a tendency though we had a little candy bar kind of to sell candy and stuff that kids would come in and buy. And Daniel had a tendency to eat up all the profits. but that was kind of just a joke amongst us as we were working. Daniel came to work to eat the candy.
along with that gas station, we had a little grocery business also, and it was called F&S Co-op. The F was for fraternities and the S was for sororities. And we would order groceries in. We became a member of AG, the Associated Grocers Association, and Charlotte would take orders from all the neighbors around, and we would have a grocery delivery once a week. The Associated Grocers truck would back up into our driveway and unload these groceries, and then people would come and they'd come and pick them up, and we'd put groceries in the old Halloween truck and deliver them to the fraternities and to the sororities. And we tied the gas station into that. We'd sell them gas at a penny a gallon less if they were a member of F&S Corp. And that worked pretty good for 3 or 4 years. We made a little money as a family. It was Charlotte's responsibility to do the ordering and help unload the truck when it came, because I was working up at the university at that time. And then the kids sold gas, and they filled out a little slip that they were a member of the F&S Co-op, and they would get their gas for a penny a gallon less. So that was another thing we had going about that time.
Awesome. Well, tell us the experience with the kids. I mean, your experience with the kids and teaching them and what?
Well, I thought the kids did really well. I mean, they liked money. They liked. I remember experience that we had teaching them that they had to work for money, and they would get paid so much depending on how well they made their bed in the morning. If the bed cover was completely flat, no wrinkles in it, and the pillows were all where they should be, they'd get a quarter. If it was only half done, they'd get a nickel or a dime. And then every once in a while, we'd surprise them with a $10 bill if it was really good. And so this,
I don't remember the $10, maybe $1.
you didn't ever get that. It could have been $1. I don't think Trace ever tried to. Scott would always try to get the very most money, and he would do extra job on his bed if the room was clean and so on. So because we'd had trouble getting them to make their beds until that time, till we started paying them. And then they would compare each other's, and then Daniel would occasionally go mess somebody's bed up, so his looked better.
That's great. I love it.
So those were little things we'd have. We had calves, and we had chickens, and we had rabbits, and we had horses, and we had animals that they had to take care of in the wintertime and chop the ice out of the watering trough so that they could drink. They get the hay down from the barns and make sure they were all fed twice a day.
Growing up in Hyde Park, Dad wanted to teach us the necessity of being responsible and taking care of animals and livestock, and so we did. We raised calves, we raised rabbits, we raised chickens, and some of us were pretty good at taking care of the animals, and sometimes we'd get involved in school activities and stuff, and Mom would have to do it. And Mom did not like to have to go take care of the animals like that. But for many years, we raised a lot of different types of animals there in Hyde Park.
We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the projects we had. We had some friends by the name of Jay and Yvonne Spencer and JL married one of the Spencer's daughters, Shar. So that ties our family back with JL. But anyway, when we moved out to Hyde Park, everybody thought we were moving out into the country, all our friends. Well, Jay and Yvonne had a couple of Easter bunnies that they got. And the Easter bunnies started growing. They got so big they didn't know what to do with them on their little lot there in town. So they said, well, the Nixons have got this farm out there, we'll take them out to them. So they said, would you want our rabbits? Because we don't know what to do with them. So they brought these Easter bunny out, and so we had those for a little while, and then we didn't know what to do with them in the winter times. We put them up in the loft with the hay, and when spring came, we had a whole slug.
Took over the neighborhood.
We had all these rabbits, and we didn't know we knew where they came from. Anyway, so I happened to be the bishop at that time, and so I hired some of my deacons and teachers that wanted to earn a little money to go trap those rabbits and catch them. After we got them all caught, we didn't know what to do with them. So I said, well, just turn them loose, turn them out and let them go. A couple, 3 days or maybe a week later, I get a call from my neighbor, Merlin. And Merlin says, Bishop, them damn rabbits of yours are eating all my garden up. You better get them caught. You better get them out of my garden. He was a gruff guy, my neighbor, and I was his bishop. And so now what do we do? How do we get the rabbits out? I don't remember how we did. We caught some, and we taught the kids to take them to school and share at school. Then people were upset because we were sending rabbits home.
Let kids take them home.
So that got us in trouble, all because of Jay and Yvonne Spencer, Char's dad and mom.
They gave you the original rabbits.
They gave us the Easter bunnies.
And they were a boy and a girl?
Yeah.
Oh.
We didn't know it.
What did you think of the rabbit experience? What do you remember from that?
I remember the roundup when we went and rounded them all up, and we had me and my brothers and our friends all gathered together for a rabbit roundup, and we rounded them all pretty much up.
Got them out of Merlin's garden.
Yeah. Another wild and crazy idea Dad came up to make money with us as kids. I wasn't involved with it because I was already gone doing something else, but Daniel and Scott were involved in raising worms to sell to a dog food company. Anyway, Dad can tell you about it. I wasn't involved with it, but that was another harebrained idea.
Yeah, we had this worm farm, and we had to get compost because the worms really grew good, and we kept it damp and so. And we'd bought an old chicken house, where they raise chicken pullets and so on.
Coop.
Chicken coop, yeah. And it had 2 stories. It had actually 3 stories, but on the second story, why we decided to turn that into a worm farm. And so the kids had to go up and keep it damp all the time so that the worms would grow, and then we would sell those. We sold those worms to fishermen, and they'd come and buy a whole half a bucket of worms to go fishing, you know. And the kids made some money from that, and then did we make fertilizer out of some of them?
Well, I thought they were selling to someone who was making dog food out of them.
Maybe so. We had to get rid of them because we had way more worms than we expected to harvest. But we still have that old coop, and it's full of 50 years of construction materials now that we didn't use all of something we had to order in or something we wanted to save, and we've got 2 floors of a building that's 80 feet long and 40 feet wide. So that's nearly 5,000 square feet of building that's full of old construction materials and so on. One day we're going to have a garage sale that surpasses any garage sale in the valley. And this last summer we've been cleaning a lot of that out and hauling a lot of stuff to the dump. But we've got some really good relics down there and old tools and all kinds of stuff. But we get to get rid of all the worms somehow. Oh, I know how we got rid of the worms. We traded a whole lot of the worms to a guy up in Arco, Idaho. And he owed us, he came in and started to run the worm farm because the kids gave up on it and they didn't want to do it anymore. So these 3 guys said, we want to do it. And it ended up that they owed me $3,000 rent. They never paid any rent, but it built up over a couple of years. They owed $3,000 rent, and so one of them said he had a piece of ground up in Arco, Idaho, and so I gave him $3,000 credit on his farm and bought his farm. Not his farm, it was just an acre of ground up there. And that's how I ended up with that piece of property up there. And nobody wanted to buy it. I finally did sell it though for about $8,000 later on. And I probably paid him another $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, I don't know, besides what he owed me. So at least I got my money back out of it 10 years later or something. That's what happened to the worm farm.
In 3 words, how would you describe your dad?
Number 1, work. Number 2, business. Number 3, profit.
Trace, tell us some of the things that you've learned from your dad.
Well, business-wise, he helped us all get involved in businesses that we made our living off of. And I remember when I decided to open up some car washes, we initially went into the bank, and the bank wanted Dad to co-sign, and we went in, and Dad says, well, Teresa's decided he wants to do this on his own. So, and the bank was kind of sort of upset about it, but they went along with it, and of course it turned out very good. It's been very successful, and through Dad's help, I've been able to be, I would consider, fairly successful. And so he taught us not to be afraid to go in and take a chance, and if we worked hard and stuck at it, it would come out okay. And I would have never done these things if I didn't have his example and his support to do some of the things that I've done.
It does in our family.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the number one thing in life, was Dad wanted to teach us to be productive, and that if we worked hard, we would be successful. The last thing he wanted was a slug in the family, or a dud that couldn't carry their own weight.
We don't have any duds. We don't have any people that are addicted to drugs or alcohol, or they're handicapped because of the type of life they live. We know that someplace along the line we'll have some handicaps that we'll deal with that when they come. But they are so far, and they married. Well, we had to tweak one out of the family along the way, but other than that, they've all turned out really good and really productive, and as you will see if you have any more interchange with any of the other kids, you'll see they're all self-confident, they're very capable, they all speak their mind. One thing I remember, Charlotte told me that kind of caught my breath, is one of our kids one time did something I didn't like, I didn't approve of. I won't say which one it was, but one of them was. And I told her, I said, I'm disappointed in so-and-so. And she said, well, now just 1 minute. You spent a lifetime teaching them to think for themselves and to make their own decisions. Then when they do something you don't like, you get mad at them. And I hadn't thought about that, but that was true, because I was proud of all of them, proud of every one of them. But they've all gone different directions, and they've all been successful by the standard of monetary success. They all are very, very honorable people in society. But when I see them do something I don't like, then I'm mad because they made that decision, and that really isn't for me to do, because as Charlotte pointed out, you're responsible for teaching them to think on their own, which I'd rather have them do. So she corrected me a lot, got me on the straight path. I was just going to say, in preference to what the story that Trace is going to tell you about, Trace has always been his own person. Ever since he's a little kid, he's he does his own thinking, and he's very bright. He's got a lot of he studies a lot, reads a lot, and he's isn't influenced by anyone else. He does his own thinking. And he decided he wanted to be a cowboy when he was in high school. And he did other things. He wrestled, he played ball, but being a rodeo bareback rider was what he wanted to do. And that wasn't the thing that his mom wanted him to do. And I wasn't too excited about it. And as a result, he still carries some of the results of landing on his head and not staying on the back of the bronc every time. He's got a buckle or two of rodeos that he's won and so on, and bareback riding and so on, but he also learned that by some sad experiences too. So, and I'm proud of him that way. He is his own person. He doesn't have an enemy in the world. I was just this morning before you came, I was with one of his friends from many, many years, and he said, "That Trace is the best friend I ever had." He says, "I'm glad he's quit driving my truck and wrecking it, and I'm glad he don't have to go pull him out of a gulch someplace because the place he gets into he can't get out of." That was just this morning. I was talking to Brian.
Yeah.
And you could tell him about the Christmas Eve.
Well, no, this is not supposed to be about me. It's supposed to be about you.
Okay. Anyway, Tracy wants to tell you, I'd like him to tell you about an experience that he had in rodeo, and we nearly lost him. And later in his life, how it affected him again. And we had some serious results of his independence. So Tracy, go ahead and talk.
Well, anyway, yeah, I used to ride rough stock in the rodeo, and I wasn't much for expressing that I was hurt or anything. So even when I was hurt, I wouldn't indicate it. And on one occasion, I was hurt pretty seriously, but didn't go to the doctor. Didn't go to. I should have took the ambulance ride from the rodeo because I was hurt, but I didn't express that I was injured bad enough. But it so happened that I'd actually broken a neck and hadn't. I was in pain, but I wasn't gonna tell anybody I was. Anyway, finally I did go to a chiropractor because the pain wasn't going away, and I needed to get ready for more rodeo. Anyway, the chiropractor, before he worked on my neck, took x-rays, and the x-rays showed that I had a break of the second vertebrae, and that made the chiropractor really nervous. So he called an orthopedic and said he had a serious injury and he needed to be seen immediately. It was after hours, but the doctor agreed because the chiropractor said that it was as bad as it was. Anyway.
What had he done for 3 days before that?
Well, it was 10 days after, actually. I actually rode a motorcycle and wrecked a motorcycle coming down the hill. I mean, I did a bunch of things. I didn't affect my life. I lived it like I did. Anyway, when the doctor saw it, he grabbed my head and said, "Don't move." He says, you could move wrong and you would be dead, because the second vertebrae actually would stop my breathing. Anyway, I learned all this, and when I went home that night, they'd of course put me in a brace and everything at that point. And anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was completely paralyzed on the left side of my body. Couldn't move, and I only had slight movement in my right hand. And when they had put me to bed, even though I hadn't done anything different, all of a sudden everybody was worried about me, and I guess I was worried about myself. So they put me in my sister's bedroom with her phone, so that if I needed help I could call, and they had put it right by my right hand. Well, I couldn't move, and the phone had a different line than my dad's, so I called my dad in the middle of the night, and I says, "Don't tell Mom, but can you come down? I think I got problems." Anyway, he came down to the bedroom, and he could see I was pretty nervous, and it's funny that I didn't experience the paralysis until 10 days after, which I probably should have had it beforehand. But anyway, he gave me a blessing, and he laid down there beside me, and within a few minutes I started to still feel the burning, severe burning in the nerves and the joints on the left side, and I could feel the feeling coming back. Anyway, I don't know, do you have anything to say about that?
He played tennis for 3 days, going around holding his head while he was running around playing tennis before this happened. I mean, it's amazing that he lived through it.
Well, yeah, the doctor said that I could have just rolled over in bed, and that would have been the end of it. Wrong if I moved wrong. But yeah, he gave me that blessing, and the feeling came back. And then what's interesting is 35 years later, or whatever it was, I started to get the effects of, well, I had broken my neck a second time too, so I had two broken neck, broke my neck twice, plus numerous other injuries from my shoulder up, from my activities. Anyway, it started to take effect. About, how long ago was that? 10? Has it been?
How long has it been? 10 years.
It's been close to 10 years ago.
10 years.
So anyway, I started getting what would you call them, spasms and so forth.
Yeah, spasms.
That
You couldn't breathe.
well, my neck had, the damage of my neck started to affect the spinal column, and here again, I didn't worry about it.
You just toughed it out.
I toughed it out until,
Tough kid.
but it started getting worse and more often, and it used to only affect me to begin with when I was exerting myself or something. And then it started occurring while I was in bed, and it got to the point where I could actually feel it expand to the point where it was affecting my
Lungs.
yeah, well, what am I? The diaphragm. The diaphragm wasn't working, and I couldn't breathe. And anyway, here again, that's who I went to. I went to my dad, and there was some times I had to call him in the middle of the night, and he came out to my house, and I was really I couldn't lay down, because that's when my breathing would stop. But I had something that I got from my mother, which was that expanded my neck, and if I moved it just right, I'd be okay. But anyway, he did the same thing again. He gave me the old blessing, everything. It it was very difficult getting into doctors because they're backed up for months, and this thing was getting worse by the day. And the only thing that got me by was my mother had a neck thing that she used to ease her neck pains, and that was a inflatable neck brace that actually could expand the vertebrae. Anyway, they put that on me, and I could pump that up and get that to make a little separation and be able to breathe. And that's how I was trying to get by until we could get into the doctor. But there were times when I thought I was going to die because I couldn't breathe. And Dad came out in the middle of the night and sat with me, and then got me to his doctor because I didn't have a doctor. And his recommendation was to get us into the emergency room, which we ended up with the best neurosurgeon in the state. But anyway, those two occurrences, once when I was in my 20s and once when I was in my 50s, when I had to rely on my dad in probably the worst conditions of my life. And he was there. He was there to when I was the most worried.
Heavenly Father blessed him.
Can you tell about the blessing?
Well, I'm not particularly religious, but Dad is. You let him talk about the blessing.
Why don't you tell in your words, and then I will have him.
Well, I'm always the type. I don't want to ask for help from anybody, and I don't particularly want to ask for help from God either. But Dad is the religious, and he's the one that gave me the blessings both times, and I do believe that there was significant effects from the prayer, and I appreciate my dad coming whenever I was in need. Well, I'm not one to ask for help, so when I did, he was right there.
Awesome. Do you remember anything specifically from the second blessing? Because you told about the first one a little bit. What do you remember when he gave you that blessing?
Are you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
He just told me that I was going to be all right. I thought I was going to die. I didn't think there was any way I could survive, because it was a struggle just to take every breath. Was an absolute, my diaphragm wasn't working, so I was having to use other muscles to actually get my lungs to work, and I thought I was a goner. There was no way I would even make it to daylight. But he gave me the blessing that I would make it, and I made it.
That's awesome.
We made a fast trip to Salt Lake. About 4 o'clock in the morning.
Well, we had to be there right when
They got there.
yeah, well, we couldn't we had to wait until your doctor was, and he's the one that told us to go to Salt Lake, and he told us where to go. He says, because this is where the best neurosurgeons are, and you need a neurosurgeon. He says, you don't need an orthopedic, you need a neurosurgeon.
And it just happened to be that doctor was on shift that night.
He was on shift when we went down. Yeah, it was in the middle of the night, wasn't it? It was Charles Rich, and we ended up finding out he's probably the best neurosurgeon in several states. In fact, he's Tiger Woods' doctor. Tiger Woods could pick anybody for a neurosurgeon, and I ended up with him that night, and he said that he would take my case because I was on schedule with somebody else, but I couldn't wait. He says, "Don't worry, you're my patient now." I'll take care of it from here.
So did they operate immediately?
2 days later, yeah, they put me in the hospital that night, and then he was able on his schedule to get to me 2 days later.
Hmm.
They put me on steroids and everything, and that gave me enough. It took away the swelling, I guess, on my neck, and I could actually breathe. But they can't give that to you for very long. So anyway.
Well, I just traced it was Tigerwood, not Tiger.
Well, yeah,
Tiger.
it was Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got the golfer had the same surgeon. Well, those were direct answers to prayer. Well, Trey says the best. He said it just like it happened both occasions, and it's interesting that I heard the phone when he dialed. He could just barely use his one hand a little bit, just enough to dial the number, but he had enough strength in his right hand to dial the number that the phone would ring upstairs when Charlotte and I were in bed, and I heard it, and Charlotte said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Nothing, just go back to sleep. I'm gonna go up and trace for a little bit." I don't know what she thought by me telling her to go back to sleep. I don't know. She didn't know what was going on. So anyway, that's exactly what happened. I couldn't think of anything that I could do for him. He's lying there paralyzed, totally paralyzed in the bed, other than to ask Heavenly Father's help. And Tab, just like he said, within probably, I think within 10 minutes, you started feeling it in your toes. You said you could.
Yeah, it was a burn. It was
He
it was like the nerves coming back alive on me. It was a severe burn. It was burning. But then the burning went away and it became tingly, and then by, in a couple hours I was moving again.
By daylight, you could move your hands, and he was restored.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Then the second time, I mean, I was afraid he was going to die too. I mean, he couldn't breathe, and in the middle of the night in Logan, Utah, who do you go to? And so we gave him another blessing, and he was starting to breathe better by the time we got in the car and got down there, and he was able to walk around and at least communicate with the medical people there or what his situation was, and that was just a blessing that Dr. Rich was on duty that night, which people of his level are not on duty in the middle of the night very often.
It's a miracle.
Well, it was the other doctor that got him into Dr. Rich.
It was Mon. I had an appointment with Mon, but it was still 3 or 4 days. And
Oh yeah, we
remember, and he says, "Believe me, you've been moved up to the front of the line," because they all saw my MRIs and everything. But he absolutely doesn't have space until then. And Mon was actually his partner,
That's right.
but Rich was on call. And he rather than say, "I'll get you into Mon right now," he says, "I'm taking you." And I said, "What about my other?" "Don't worry, you're mine now."
This Charles Rich, who operated on Tiger Wood. I guess a tiger can pay for the best.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the best one. I think he's the best one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he took care of me. So.